Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today is one of those really special days for me when I get to talk with somebody whose playing I'm really familiar with, who's someone I've listened to on records thousands of times perhaps, with Caleb Quaye, which is Elton John's original guitar player. He played on one of my all-time favorite albums, Madman Across the Water, and was an essential part of Elton's early band. Quick announcement. I want to thank Valerie Tucker for putting this together, and we'll talk about Valerie's role with Caleb as well. Quick intro for Caleb. Eric Clapton once called Caleb the best guitarist in the world, so pay attention. Caleb was Elton, right? Caleb was, there you go. So it's true. Caleb was Elton John's guitarist during his early classic period and beyond. He toured with Elton and played on the albums Empty Sky, Elton John, Tumbleweed Connection, and Madman Across the Water, Rock the Westies, Captain Fantastic, Blue Moves, live in Central Park, New York, and Blue Moves and live in Central Park, New York. He was also a successful sideman who played or toured with Billy Nicholls, Harry Nilsson, Al Kooper, Long John Baldry, Pete Townshend, Lou Reed, Shawn Phillips, Hall & Oates, Peter Criss, Dusty Springfield, Joan Baez, the Beach Boys, Saxon. Was that correct?
Saxon. I can't even remember now.
That's like a heavy metal band. That's like totally like, that's a pretty diverse group you got, but that's like a real third wheel Saxon.
Oh boy.
And loads of other artists. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and who also plays bass, keyboards, and drums. He's also released 2 solo records of his own. Caleb grew up in England, and his dad was also a multi-instrumental jazz player. Today, Caleb's a minister at the Foursquare Church and a worship elder at the Church on the Way in Van Nuys, California. Now, here's a cool thing, man. A movie of Caleb's life has just been released. It's called A Voice Louder Than Rock. It was written by Caleb and produced and directed by the lady I mentioned a few minutes ago, Valerie Tucker. Man, the film is outstanding. It's a really good, very passionate, very honest and raw documentary. And it's starting to win a number of independent film awards. For example, they just won Best Documentary, period, at the San Diego Black Film Festival, which is a big film festival, obviously, out in San Diego. So pay attention to it, and let's have a good time talking to Caleb. So, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. So, and I didn't pronounce your last name wrong, did I?
No.
I saw this guy. No, I saw you had an interview, and it's like one syllable, and the guy just like butchered your last name. I felt horrible. So, no, I was asking Valerie. I said, "How do you pronounce his last name?" I said, "Is it Quaye?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I thought I've been pronouncing it wrong for 55 years." You know?
Oh, that's right, in San Diego. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, "What?" Man, how did you first get started in the music business, Caleb? And what was like your first break?
Oh boy. Well, it was when I left school when I was 15, and I dropped out of school when I was 15, and my mom told me this was on a Friday, and I gave her my report card, and I told her, I said, I'm done. I'm not going back. You know, so she said, okay, tomorrow morning, you're going to go get on the train, go downtown and find a job. I said, okay. So I did. And I got a job in it was in the Soho district of London there, in a wholesale music distributor. This was to do with sheet music. Sheet music was big back then. So this is 1965.
Sure.
And
just a moment.
Whoops, this is weird.
maybe
I got my phone here.
Maybe there's something important that we're supposed to wait for just a moment.
It's like Siri just like responded to me speaking. This is really bizarre. Let me just power this thing off. Big Brother's watching here on interviews and stuff.
Yeah, man.
So I got this job, and my job was to go down Tin Pan Alley, which was Denmark Street, and visit the music publishers. And take orders for sheet music and then deliver those things, you know. So it was during that time I met this guy, Reg Dwight, who became Elton John. He had a similar job. He was an office boy in one of the music publishing companies. And then, to cut a long story short, a short while after that, about, I don't know, 4 months or something after that, one of my clients, he said to me, he said, you know, I just heard if you're interested that Dick James Music is looking for an office boy. Now, Dick James Music was the Beatles' music publishing company. It was like the biggest game in town, you know. And I went, really? You know, now I was supposed to report back to my job. You know, I just shot round to Dick James Music, presented myself. I said, I hear you're looking for an office boy. I said, I'm your man, you know.
Right on, man.
And that's how I got the job. And I got an interview with Dick that day, you know, and he asked me my name, and I told him. He says, is your father Cab K? I said, yeah, that was my dad's stage name. And Dick knew my father.
Oh, okay.
He said, really? And he called the administrator guy, you know, he says, come down here. He says, this is Cab K's son. And I'm sitting there all nervous, you know, and they gave me the job right there on the spot, you know. That's awesome. That's how I got into it. You know, I always wanted to get into it because I was really born into the music industry as a kid through my father, because he was a well-known singer and entertainer back then in those days. And so that's all I ever wanted to do was make music as a kid, you know. Started playing the piano when I was 4. My dad taught me, you know, and then drums when I was 7. I was sitting in with my dad's band.
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of a little prodigy type, you know, and then picked up the guitar when I was 12. And by the time I was, you know, 15, 16, I was making records.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
And this was in London?
In London. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, so you talk about in the movie, your dad walked out on you guys, on your family, which obviously causes all sorts of chaos.
Yeah.
And you opened the movie. This was pretty intense. You said, we're all driven by something. I just hated my dad. Yeah. And I got to be honest, I had a similar relationship with my father. So the raging and the violence and just the drama. So I get it. Yeah. So I was curious for you, how did that hate drive you?
It was really, the catalyst for it was when he bought me my first guitar when I was 12 years old. And now prior to my getting that guitar, for 3 years, I guess 2 years prior to that, like on my 10th birthday, just before my 10th birthday, my dad would ask me, son, what would you like for your birthday? I said, oh, Dad, I'd love a guitar. Please get me a guitar, you know. And he said, okay. So when my birthday came around, he'd forgot about it and he'd get me something else. And so then the next year when I'm on my 11th birthday, same thing. Right before my birthday, he'd ask me, son, what would you like for your birthday? Oh, please, Dad, a guitar, please. Okay, great. I'll get you a guitar. Birthday comes up. He's forgotten about it again, drunk or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a guitar, you know. And finally on my 12th birthday, same thing, you know. Son, what would you like for your birthday? Dad, please, please, please. I'd love a guitar. So finally, he takes me downtown to some pawn shop and gets me this horrible acoustic guitar. You know, now I'm overjoyed. I'm finally, oh man, I'm like, I'm gonna get a guitar. You know, just this little cheap acoustic guitar. The strings are like half an inch off the neck. You know? And so we come back home with this guitar. Didn't even have a case. It was in a nylon bag, you know, plastic bag. You know, and I'm carrying this guitar. You know, and we get home and he takes me into the living room in our house where the piano was. And I'm all excited because I'm thinking, great, my dad's going to give me a guitar lesson. You know?
Right.
So we go in there and he sits down at the piano, takes the guitar and he shows me how to tune it up. Here's the notes, E, A, D, G, B, E, you know. Tunes the guitar up for me, then hands it back to me. He says, there you are, you're on your own now. And he walks out. I was destroyed. I was like, what's going on here? You know, and I thought my dad was going to give me a guitar lesson. And then it was about, I don't know, not long, less than a month after that, he left us. He split, you know, and that kicked it in. I thought to myself, well, I said to myself, I'm going to show you. I'm going to
Right.
become, to this day, I still remember it. I said, I'm going to become one of the best in the world. F you, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, righteous indignation is
Oh,
a
yeah.
strong motivator. Yeah, man. I had a
Yeah.
lot of that.
And that did it, man. That was the cat. And I just went for it. I went to that guitar. I had a friend of mine in school. A good friend of mine, and he was playing a guitar, and his parents had some money, and so they sent him to guitar lessons, you know.
Right.
So he'd come back with his books and stuff, and I'd say, "What did they learn? What did they teach you this week?" And so he showed me. So I'm stealing everything he.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
I mean, I'm just going for it, you know, and and listening to records, and just went. And pretty soon, by age 14, I had a band in school. You know, we're doing early Beatles stuff and everything. And the girls are screaming at us, and I'm just going for this thing, man. And but that was the driver. That's when it happened. That's you're on your own now. I thought, you punk, what do you do? What's this? You know, you're supposed to be giving me a guitar lesson.
Yeah, man, that sense of abandonment is haunting for years and years and years. And then he actually leaves and does literally abandon you all, man.
Absolutely.
So it's like,
yeah, he put us through hell.
yeah, man. Okay, so I'm sorry. What? I apologize.
No, it was the next few years after that, were very tough.
Well, man, it's a lifelong tough when you have that.
Yeah.
It's a constant, adjusting and learning and packaging what's in your head every time you learn something new, man. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. So you got a job when you were running, you basically became the guy, you were running the new studio for Dick James, and you're doing demos for all their artists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were some of the most important lessons that you learned from that experience musically? And like, maybe if you could share, the top 2 or 3, musical experiences you had during that time.
Wow. Well, one thing, before I get to that, one thing, and I honestly don't quite know where I got it from. Well, actually, no, I do. Is that I got it in my head that I needed to learn. I wanted to learn everything about the process, the entire process of making music. So it wasn't just the playing, but it was the songwriting, the arranging, and then the production side of it, the engineering.
Yeah.
So we had a term we used to say back in those days, what was going on both sides of the glass.
Yeah, of course.
So in the studio, you got the glass, where on one side is the engineer, and on the other side is where the performance is taking place, And I used to see, this was a time now, this is like mid-60s, so, 65, 66, around there. And I saw a lot of jazz musicians that were suddenly being passed over, because they only stuck to playing one style of music. So I thought, I need to learn to play everything if I'm going to survive in this game.
You mean passed over for sessions or just
for sessions? Yeah, because they couldn't handle it.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting, the whole drumming thing from the jazz days, the big band jazz stuff, time was dictated largely from the cymbals.
Yeah.
And the kick drum was just like a comma here and there, it's like an accident almost.
That's a good way to put it, like a comma. Yeah, it really was. They're all swing oriented.
Yeah, all this whole swing thing, so the cymbals and the hi-hat, and then the bass drum was just like an accident.
Yeah.
But then the Beatles came along and 2/4 came in. It was kick, snare, Ringo just turned everybody on their head, and these jazz musicians would have this attitude, because we'd be in the studio and a younger producer, such as Andrew Oldham, who was a Rolling Stones' manager, I used to do sessions for him. He'd say to the drummer, he says, can you play it like Ringo? He says, no, that's not drumming, that's for idiots, And I'm thinking, oh boy, this guy's going to be out the door pretty soon.
Yeah.
And Andrew said, I just want, 2/4, just like Rick, boom, da, boom, boom, da. That's it. Don't give me all of that other flowery stuff. I just want, this groove, So this was a paradigm shift. in how music was being made back in those days, and the Beatles spearheaded it. And so I was very acutely aware of what was going on here. And of course, there was an old saying back then that you're only as good as your last gig.
Sure, man. Sure.
It's a real thing. And back then I was working with a contractor. It was all union sessions, and you had a contractor booking you for studio gigs.
Is that not like that anymore?
Well, it depends. It's
Okay.
not as intense as what it used to be, but it depends on what you're doing. Because now we got a lot of recordings are done at home with Pro Tools and digital stuff like that. But if you're doing like a film score session or something like that, it's still union.
Yeah, I thought, okay.
TV stuff like that, still union. But back in those days, everything was union. If you were going to get into it, you couldn't get into a recording studio without union stuff, And so I was, that's how I started, and my studio career really took off in '66. When I was booked for a session actually with Billy Nicholls, and the contractor came up to me. I'll never forget, his name was David Katz, and he came up to me, he says, "Caleb, I really love the way you play." He says, "I've got all this work lined up for Jimmy Page, but he doesn't want," he says, "Jimmy doesn't want to do it anymore." Now, this was in '66 when Jimmy Page was like the big, studio guitar player, A-list player. He was playing all the hit stuff like for Herman's Hermits, and which people never even knew about him. And
I heard
John
the
Paul
Kinks
Jones.
as well.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay.
And so him and John Paul Jones were, the top session guys.
Yeah.
But then Jimmy had gotten fed up with it. He was having a meltdown in the studios because he wanted to do his own music. And so that's when he left the studio scene and joined the Yardbirds.
Right.
'66 with Jeff Beck. So David Katz comes up to me and he says, and I'm this 16-year-old kid. He says, "Would you like to do this work?" I said, "Yeah, would I?"
Twist my arm. Yeah.
So he said, "Well, what I need you to do is you need to join the Musicians Union." I said, "Hold it right there. I'll go do that right now."
Yeah.
And I ran out, signed up for the union. I think I was one of the youngest guys to join the union back then. And I picked up a ton of, Jimmy Page's work. And that's how it started,
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah. So it was very providential stuff, being in the right place at the right time, but also having the right attitude, in terms of what's happening today, because a lot of the jazz guys, their heads were stuck back in the 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
And now we're in the 60s and everything's changing.
Well, it also sounds like you were pretty hungry and didn't mind hustling. Like, the guy says you need to join the union. You're like, okay, let me do that immediately.
Oh, jump on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's hustle, man. A lot of guys who said, "Okay, man, I'll get to that next week."
Oh, yeah. No, I knew, I don't know if it's a gift or what, but I just knew when certain doors opened, these were doors of opportunity that you only get once.
Yeah, that's good. Really good.
And you just jump on it. Like the Dick James thing, when that guy said to me, "They're looking for an office boy," I thought it was just like, "Ding, get me there," because that is what is happening right now.
That thing of doors opening and having awareness has been a pretty, throughout the movie and through your life, it's been a pretty recurring theme that you have, fortunately been hip to and, jumped on stuff, which is great. I got to ask you, man, in '67, you released a single called, this is the craziest name, "Baby, Your Phrasing Is Bad."
Yeah.
Dude, I just, what is the backstory to that title? I never asked, but this is too wacky, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
was that directed at another musician or like woman or
it was a woman. It was about some girlfriend, who just, it was like I couldn't understand, what are you saying? you know.
They wrote a book about that later called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Oh my
So yeah,
God.
it was just very innocently directed to some chick that I knew. It was nuts, you know, and so that's what "Baby, Your Phrasing Is Bad," you know.
Yeah, that is definitely.
And no meaning can be had when you talk to me. That was.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now it
And
all
you know,
makes.
the funny thing is, we you know, when you listen to the record, there's a lot of tape phasing on the tape phase the track. You got this whooshing stuff going on, you know. And to this day, I mean, I've had calls from the BBC and stuff, and it's gone down as like one of the classic, you know, psychedelic recordings of that time period.
I can believe it. That's a typical
now,
psychedelic name too.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even thinking in those terms, you know.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you know, Hendrix had shown up on the scene, and so I was influenced by that, you know. So that's like some of the guitar work on there. But and now I'm told that to this day, if they're selling copies, if you can get a vinyl copy, because it was just a 45 single, if you can get a copy, it's selling for like £13,000.
Are you kidding me?
That's what they told me. Yeah, yeah.
£13,000?
Pounds, yeah. It's like ridiculous.
Wow. That's like a rare baseball card or something like
Crazy
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But for everybody listening, you can actually find it on YouTube. "Baby, Your Phrasing Is Bad." And he's right. There's a lot of whooshing in it. Maybe it's "Baby, Your Phasing Is Bad" on that. You had a band, your band Hookfoot, and you guys often backed Elton John on stage and in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I understood this right. Hookfoot also toured the States on their own. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How'd you guys get that tour booked?
We were signed to Dick James Music, and then Dick did a distribution deal with A&M Records, US, back in those days. So A&M they released our records out here and brought us over here to tour.
Okay, so A&M did. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. Oh, that was fun stuff. And you know, we would, you know, sometimes we'd headline some shows, and sometimes we would open up shows for bigger acts, you know. So we opened up shows for the Jefferson Airplane and Paul Butterfield, and it was great time.
Yeah, those are some good bands. There's a movie, a really cool movie out on Amazon Prime about Butterfield. Man, it was really interesting.
I just saw it the other day.
Wasn't that good?
The Horn in His Heart.
Yeah. Right. Wasn't that was really good, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was something else. He was really great.
Yeah, man. I really dug his stuff.
Yeah. But you asked it earlier on. You asked, and I don't know if I answered your question right, but you asked about life lessons learned in the
top 2 or 3 lessons or experiences you had there. Yeah.
Right. One of the things I learned was, especially when you get into studio situation, is number one is discipline. There's a certain discipline involved. The other one is how could I explain it? You have to be secure in what you know that you can do, because you're being hired to bring something to the table, you know. So you have to be. It's not a place for insecurities.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember I used to see a lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of singers or something. They don't do it so much these days, but back in those days, the red light in the studio. Once that red light goes on, we're committing to tape. You know, we're recording, you know. And a lot of people would get real nervous when that red light goes on. And there's something about when that red light goes on, it's like you're you're committing something of your life to tape.
Yeah.
There was an old saying that, and of course it's not prevalent today because it's digital, but back then they used to say, the tape doesn't lie.
Yeah, man.
So you play something, you know, then you go back into the control room to hear it.
Yeah, it is what it is, man.
If it sucks, it sucks, and it's on you. You know what I'm saying?
Totally, man.
So you really got to know your stuff, you know. And so it requires something of a virtuoso ability to play that stuff and to interpret somebody's ideas. They say,
Yeah.
oh, well, I want it to sound like this. And so you got to know, well, what is this that he's talking about? So you're required to be something of a musicologist.
Sure.
So we used to spend a lot of times just listening to all kinds of records, you know, because like, for instance, very simple situation, you know, producer would say, well, I want this to sound like Memphis.
Mm.
Okay, what's that sound like? Well, I got to know about Booker T and the MGs. I got to know about Otis Redding. I got to get my head into that music and figure out, you know, why, you know, how they playing this, who's playing what, and how is it doing this, you know.
Yeah.
So I can bring some, you know. So as a guitar player, I was a Steve Cropper addict. I studied every lick. I had every record that they did, you know.
Yeah.
So that I could bring that to the table, you know. And then vice versa, because back in those days, music was very regional.
Yes,
it was regional. So they say, "Oh, we want this to be like Motown." So, okay, what does that sound like? So, get your head into James Jamerson and the guitar players in Motown and all that, and all those rhythm parts and everything. You know, so it was a lifetime, years of just studying, constantly, not only playing but then listening to stuff. You know, and absorbing all these different areas of creativity and trying to reproduce them.
You mentioned you said about you needed like you got to be good under pressure when that, you know, when the light goes on.
Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would bet that was an easy thing for you because of all the shit you had to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because when you have trauma as a young person,
yeah,
what the average person thinks is stress is a walk in the park to you, man.
Yeah.
I totally get that, man. It's almost like you operate best under that condition.
Yeah, there is that to it. Yeah.
Okay, so then ultimately Elton hires you to be his guitar player. I don't even know if this is a fair question. Did you ever expect, or did you ever get the vibe that, hey man, this is something's going on here, this is going to be special? Or was that not possible?
Well, you know, the way that worked, and of course this is really detailed in the movie, is that we first met as teenagers in Denmark Street, Tin Pan Alley, and we became friends over a common love for music. So we would spend all our money going to record stores and buying records, you know.
Right.
And then when he got signed to Dick James Music, I was the guy that got him signed.
And that's something, man.
Yeah, I was his first producer, because we met at Dick James Music. Then not Dick James, in Tin Pan Alley. And then during that time, he left Mills Music and he went to form his band, Bluesology, a band called Bluesology. So he disappeared on the road. I didn't see him for about 6 months. And then during that time, right after he left, I got my job at Dick James Music. So I'm in Dick James Music. I became the office boy there. And then very, very soon after that, they were in the process of forming their own little record label and building their own recording studio, which Dick's son, Stephen James, was in charge of. But that was not going to be Stephen's career. He was being groomed by his father to take over the whole business, you know. So after a while, Stephen got too busy and they're looking for somebody to take over the studio. Well, while Stephen was running the studio, I was poking my head in there. Do you need some guitar? You know, how can I help? You know, and so they recognized I was really interested in this, and I was like the music guy. So they handed the studio over to me. So I was running that studio when I was 16 years old.
And you know, and you think about, you know, 2 years earlier, you're playing that crappy acoustic guitar. Your dad leaves the house. No, seriously, that's a major. I mean, you probably didn't stop to think of this at that point in time. But you know, looking now at a young kid who had to go through that, man, what a yeoman's effort, pat on the back you deserve for accomplishing that in that, turmoil of a situation around you.
Yeah. It was just another amazing door of opportunity.
Yeah.
And Dick was, to his credit, I mean, he was a real nurturing guy. He was like a father to us.
That's great.
He gave us an opportunity to learn our craft.
Yeah.
So this guy Ray Williams comes along and he brings Reg Dwight into the studio to record some demos. See, because everybody wanted to get their songs published by Dick James because he was the
because they published the Beatles. Okay,
the biggest. It was huge,
right.
Huge deal, and I was the A&R guy for his record company.
So you must have gotten a lot of people like basically kissing your butt.
begging,
yeah.
Starving artists.
Yeah.
Could we please record this one song?
Yeah.
So I'm having guys come in, after hours. Because to me, I was, I was trying to help people out, but on the other hand, I was learning my craft. It was an opportunity to learn how to record and do stuff. So I was very aware of that. So it was they were amazing times, And so, so when Reg came in, we did his first demo and that's when they said, well, the music's good, but the lyrics are weak. We need a lyricist. So that's when Ray Williams put out an advert in the New Musical Express, which was an English music paper back then, for a lyricist. And that's when Bernie Taupin responded to that ad. And that's when they teamed up writing songs, and they would come into the studio and I'd be recording them. I was their first producer.
Man, you talk about serendipity between those guys hooking up.
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's something, man.
Yeah.
That's
totally.
a long relationship they've had.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you talked about this in the movie. It was quite funny. You did a session for Joan Armatrading. I had her here on the show, man. She was lovely.
Oh, really? Oh, great.
She was so nice.
Yeah,
I mean, she was. Now, let me tell you, there was a wall of people. Like I had to go. I had to get vetted.
Okay.
And once she realized I had no agenda, it was like she was let her guard. She was lovely, man. She was, very great sense of humor, very cheeky, really cool.
Yeah.
But you have a great story about working with her on her first record, man.
Yeah.
I would like if you could share that story, but make sure you come around full circle to that comment that she gave your buddy 40 years later.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, man.
Well, yeah, Joan. So this was, I forget what year it was. It must have been, I'm going to say about 71, somewhere around there.
It was her first record, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, 71, 72, somewhere around there. And Gus Dudgeon, who was Elton's producer. So during this time, myself and Hookfoot, we were doing a lot of sessions for Gus Dudgeon because Elton had become famous and everything. And so we were very busy. And I mean, it was crazy busy. I mean, we would be in the middle of a tour. We would be doing gigs, driving 203 miles up to north of England, drive back down to London the next day to land in the studio to do a gig, So we're at the Marquee Studios and Gus says, I'm producing this new gal, Joan Armatrading. Great. So Davey was on the session as well. So we land in the studio, and I mean, we're tired. I mean, we have just been on the road, just burned. So she's in there, so we get all set up, and so we said, let's hear the song, And so she starts playing, and she's strumming away, and her guitar was so unbelievably out of tune. It was horrific, and I'm thinking, what the heck, So we're trying to figure out what, and not only was the guitar playing out of tune, but she had all these weird time signatures. There was no chart. It was just very bare bones, And I'm just getting ticked off, and I'm tired, and patience is running out the window, and I'm thinking, nobody's saying anything. Is it just me? And I thought, Gus, I'm waiting for Gus to say something, you know.
Like, tune your guitar, please.
Tune your guitar, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
He ain't saying a word. I'm thinking, this, you know. And finally, I just blew a fuse, threw the headphones off, and told her to tune the blankety blank thing up, you know. Stormed out the studio, threw my guitar down, and I just had it, you know.
Right.
And I went to the pub round the corner, just wait for the other guys to finish, you know.
You were just knackered, right? Because it's not like you're totally, that's like totally opposite your MO.
It's not how I function at all.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
I was just done, you know. And and so you know, that's how that session finished, you know. And Davey finished it off. They somehow finished it off, you know. And I never heard, and I knew she'd gotten very successful after that, you know, but I never, you know, bumped into her or anything like that until like about 40 years later. I get a phone call from my dear friend Roger Pope, who was playing drums in a session, drummer for Hook and everything. And Roger had just been to a party. Actually, I believe, if my memory serves me right, I think the party was right after Gus Dudgeon's funeral when he passed away. So so he was there. So he called me up on the phone. He's, hey man, and I'm living over here in California now. And, hey man, how you doing? Yeah, great. He says, I was at this party. He says, do you remember Joan Armatrading? Oh my God, yeah. I said, how's she doing? What? He says, well, he says, she was at the party and she told me to tell Caleb, thanks for that. I needed that and I still love him.
That's great, man. So
I was just
that's
thrilled.
Great.
Yeah,
so her guitar was woefully out of tune.
Oh, it was bad, yeah. And she was, I think at the time, she was about 16 years old.
She was really young, her first record,
She was really young, you know, so she didn't know what she was doing. You know, she was like, there was her and a friend, a school friend, you know.
Right.
I think she may even have been still at school or just out of school, you know. Very young, you know, and she was like deer in the headlights. When I stormed out of there, she was just couldn't believe it, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it served as a good kick in the pants for her to get her stuff together.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was really grateful to hear that.
Yeah, that's nice. That's like nice closure, kind of unexpected, kind of nice closure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out a few artists that you worked with. If you could talk about how you wound up connecting with them and maybe a cooler, interesting story about working with them when you did sideman work. You worked on the Nilsson Schmilsson album with Harry Nilsson. That is an incredible, incredible record, man.
Oh, thanks. That was, oh boy, I call that, it's so funny because, you know, there's always a backstory to something. For me, and if Roger Pope was still alive, he'd tell you the same thing. They were the nightmare sessions.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was not fun. No.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, Nilsson was really, he was heavy into cocaine and stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty, that's his stories. Yeah. But that was when he was out of control at the time.
He was, yeah. And him, and at the time, his producer, who was Richard Perry at the time. And so it was nuts. We did it in Trident Studios. And, you know, well, I can tell you this story. The song Coconut, which is on there.
Uh-huh.
So I played the guitar on Coconut, you know. Well, you're a guitar player, right? I can see you got your guitars up there. So
yeah,
the guitar players will love this one. That was the nightmare session of my life.
Really?
Well, the song's only got one chord in it, right?
Uh-huh.
C7.
Okay.
With the lime in the coconut, C7, G on the bass, C, boom, you know. And so if I was to ask you, how long do you think it took to record that song? I'll save you the effort. How about 16 hours?
No,
Yep.
I was going to say maybe an hour.
16 hours. They were
Wow.
so out of their minds, they couldn't make up their mind which way they wanted that song to go. And it's only got one chord in it. So, brother, I'm telling you, I'm one of those guitar players that has been to hell and lived to tell the tale, because I know everything there is to know about C7.
All 5 notes.
Yeah.
Or all 4 notes, I should
Oh
say.
man,
Yeah, yeah.
it was unbelievable. It was crazy.
Wow.
We went in the studio at, I believe it was like, about 7 o'clock at night, and didn't come out till 2:30 the next day.
No, was that so? Were you guys paid hourly? So it was like a profitable session, but it was like,
Oh, we were getting paid triple scale. It was beautiful.
But for the return on the mental stress return on that investment was low. Yeah.
Crazy
Wow.
stuff, you know. So, you know,
16 hours, man.
Yeah, so Rolling Stone, you know, when the record came out, Rolling Stone says, "Oh, this is a work of genius." And I'm going, "No, you need to talk to me."
Yeah. Wow. Wow, man.
They were out of their minds on cocaine and LSD.
Wow. It's amazing to think, like, because I may have done those things like for research purposes when my younger days, and the thought of doing anything on like, let alone making a record, like you can't even communicate. You can't even have a conversation properly.
No,
man.
it was just, just crazy. It was just, I can't imagine that they had to do the vocals over again, you know, because, you know, I mean, I remember Nilsson was in the vocal booth, you know, and he's got a bag of Coke in his pocket, and they put the lime in the coconut, you put the lime in the coconut. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh my God.
Insane. Yeah.
16 hours. Nice, man.
16 hours, yeah. And me and Roger Pope were looking at each other. We're going, just hang in triple scale.
Yeah.
Just hang in there.
That's all you can do, man.
Oh yeah. Hanging on for dear life, yeah.
You worked with Lou Reed on his first record, along with Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman. I had no clue that any of you guys were on that till I did this research.
Yeah. There were some funny sessions. I was never really a Lou Reed fan, you know. But again, that was during a period of time, again, during the 70s, the early 70s, where a lot of American producers were coming over to England to use the English guys so they could get that English sound.
Of course.
Whatever that means, you know.
Yeah.
And so we would get booked on all these sessions, you know. So that was, again, through my contractor. Oh, you're at Morgan Studios.
That guy Katz that you had mentioned?
Yeah. He booked the sessions, yeah.
Wow.
And he says, yeah, you can be at Morgan. You'll be playing with Rick Wakeman. I think Steve, I don't remember playing with Steve Howe. So I'm assuming he played on some tracks that I didn't play on. I do remember playing with Rick Wakeman there. I used to do a lot of stuff with Rick. And, it was just another session. It wasn't anything I could really say that, this is really great, or I could really get my head into it. And he seemed to be the kind of guy that didn't seem to really give too much direction. I always remember thinking, does he really know what he's doing or what he wants? You know?
Yeah. Well, that was his first record too.
Right, from the what is he, New York Dolls or something? No.
No. That was Velvet Underground.
Velvet Underground, right? Yeah.
Velvet Underground.
So that was his first thing outside of that group.
Yeah.
So he was also researching too. So it was interesting. So that was not really a whole lot more to comment on that.
and then Shawn Phillips, man, what a talented.
Oh yeah,
what a talented dude.
Shawn was a friend. Yeah, he was great. Unique talent, totally unique talent. You know, so his sessions were always very interesting. You know,
and you got him through your the booking agent as well.
Actually, no, Shawn. That was directly from Shawn and his producer. Yeah, who was Jonathan Weston. Boy, I'm amazed I even remember that. Yeah,
that's pretty sharp, man. Your memory's pretty. Just going through that whole movie, I was pretty impressed. It's like, you know, and it ain't like you didn't have a little interruptions in the middle there, man. For like put your memory on pause for a bit there, man. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Jonathan Weston. Yeah, and that was. And Shawn I'd known because I first met him at Dick James Music. He came up to Dick James Music, looking to get his songs published. So that's where I first met him. I first met Shawn in, I think it was 66.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When did you move to the States, and like what prompted you to make that move?
I moved over here in 74. 74. At that time in England, the music scene was changing. Hookfoot had broken up. Really largely due to the fact that the whole scene was changing over there. The whole, what do they call it? The glitter scene and glam rock.
Glam.
And all that stuff. Yeah, and all that stuff came in, and that wasn't for me. It wasn't for us. And so, and I'd always been interested. I'd grown up and been strongly influenced by American music, and of course we toured over here, prior to that. So my head was into what was happening over here, both historically and current. And so I was booked. A guy came over. A company came over and was doing an album. They booked me to do this album with a guy called Bill Quaitman, who was signed to CBS at that time. And this guy owned a jingle production company in Chicago. And he offered to have me move out there. He says, we could get you a lot of work out there. And and I thought, and again, it was another one of those doors of opportunity. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to jump on this. So, and at the time, my first wife, she had miscarried the baby.
Right.
And it's funny. It was weird. It was like I came out of the hospital, and that day went to the studio to do this session, and that's when the guy offered me this opportunity.
Wow.
That day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? It just seemed like my world in England had fallen apart right then. So I said, you know what? Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
So, it was in March of 74. I moved over here.
Did your wife come, or she stayed in the UK?
Yeah, she came over.
Yeah.
And that was March of 74. And then towards the end of, let's see, it would have been about maybe January. So I'm living in Chicago. And thank God
it's like living in England, man, with the weather.
Yeah, England and then the North Pole in the winter.
Yeah.
So I'm freezing over there in the winter, and Elton calls me up and he says, I'm changing the band. I want you to come and join the band. I said, when? How soon? Get me out of here,
Yeah.
So that's when I joined the band in 75.
So Elton was the first musical act to sell out Madison Square Garden 7 nights in a row.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then in the movie, you talk about how 20 minutes before you're about to go on stage for one of those shows, they literally give you the pink slip and tell you you're fired.
Yeah.
So to whatever extent you're comfortable, Caleb, what happened there? And more important, how the hell did you manage to complete the rest? I mean, talk about being preoccupied and not really in the mood to do the show for the dude. That's not, that's got to be like stomach twisting, man.
Oh, yeah. That was the anger show.
Anger show.
Yeah, it was. Everybody was upset.
Yeah.
It was, well, what was happening? I think this is one of those things where, this is 76, and Elton had done his interview in Rolling Stone where he came out, and so he was under all kinds of pressure in his own personal life, and he just, he needed a break, that's for sure. But the way it happened was, it was just so sudden. It was just absolutely surreal. It was literally 20 minutes before we went on stage. And, the manager came out, who was John Reed at that time, and came around and told us, this is the last show. It's all over.
So it wasn't like you all were getting fired. Like the whole thing was done at that point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The whole thing was done. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like we were getting fired and then he's getting somebody else. It was like
Okay.
He was done.
Yeah, he was done.
Yeah, he was pulling the curtain down. So that was it, you know. So it was just, and it was surreal because at that time the band had gotten so tight. Those shows were
Yeah.
so good. The whole thing was, you know, I mean, the band could have done anything. You know, we could have, you know, there were so many possibilities. We were all dreaming stuff, and you know, we could do this, you know. And then all of a sudden, no. Yeah, so it was surreal. And so we doing the show. I mean, by that time, the show you're on automatic. You know, we had the show down. You know, we could do the show in our sleep. You know, so we just went out. You just go out and you fly on automatic. You know, and the crowd's all with you. You know, but there was a lot of angst in there. In fact, I think in the movie we have a clip of that show.
Yes.
We got a clip from somebody, you know, from YouTube or something, you know, and so you can see at the very end of it, you know, Elton's throwing piano stalls and just losing his mind, and you know, it's just, yeah, it was an unhappy time.
Well, and when you see, my wife and I saw Rocket Man recently.
Oh yeah.
And when you see his background, it's like everybody's peeling layers of dysfunction.
Yeah.
You know, and that when you add drugs and all that crap to it, man, is, you don't have coping skills to begin with, and you add drugs to the mix, man, is not you know, the ending is never good.
Yeah.
Okay. So then after, I would imagine, just knowing the business, you probably scrambled, like, you know, you're at this gig and all of a sudden you're zero. That's like,
oh yeah, that was a
scary place,
adjustment.
man.
There's a big adjustment. That was a tough one, you know. So it was, then after that, let's see, Roger and Kenny, they got the gig. I think it was primarily through Kenny. Had made friends with Daryl Hall and
Kenny Passarelli.
Kenny Passarelli, yeah.
Yeah.
So he got Roger in, and then Roger contacts me and says, "Hey, you know, how do you fancy doing this gig?" You know, so great. So they came out to LA and did a little audition. So I joined it, and that's how I got the gig with Hall and Oates. You know, they got me into it, which was good. But it was still, you know, you're kind of going down like this, you know. It was a big adjustment. It was a big adjustment to make.
At around that time, and again, if any of this you're uncomfortable, you want me to edit out, please let me know. So drugs were a significant part of your life, and I would imagine in this unhappy situation, career-wise, probably becoming more of a significant part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You just turned 30, and you find out your wife is stepping out on you back in the UK. You can't leave in the middle of the tour to go deal with that. You're in your hotel room, hammered, and suddenly you hear a voice speaking to you. And if you can you share that experience and also the promise that you made to yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Please.
Well, this was in Atlanta. We were on tour with Hall and Oates. And, you know, back in those days, the tours were pretty long. We were out there, you know, 6 months at a shot, you know. And so while all that stuff was going down, and I was just getting more depressed, and, you know, and it was on my 30th birthday. We were in Atlanta at the Omni Hotel. There was an Omni Theater right next door to it, and the adjacent hotel. So after we did the gig, we went back to the hotel. The band and the crew threw a surprise birthday party for me, you know. So I remember they came barging into my room with this birthday cake that was just piled up with drugs and everything. I call it the most illegal birthday cake you've ever seen. And so we just partied on, you know, till the wee hours of the morning, you know. So when they all crawled out of my room, I'm sat in my room, you know, with my back to the window, and I'll never forget, it was on the 9th floor, and I'm just sat there, just chilling out, and all of a sudden, I hear this voice just interrupt my world and just start to speak to me. And the voice was so loud, I thought somebody had come back into my room. And I
So it
turned around.
wasn't a voice in your head. It was actually volume out loud, like we're talking to each other. Okay.
Yeah, I thought so. And I looked around, see who was that, and there was nobody there. And this voice starts to tell me and call me by my name. Says, Caleb, from this point on, your life is going to be completely different, and nothing's going to be the same for you ever again. And the next thing I know, I'm not high on the dope anymore. I'm stone cold sober. I'm sat in the midst of what I can only describe as an electric silence. And all I knew was, in my own limited understanding of things, all I knew was that I had been spoken to. I just didn't know by whom. So I sat there and made a promise to myself. I said, well, one day I'm going to find out who that voice belonged to. And so that was it, packed up next day, and we're back on the road, and et cetera, et cetera. And I would bump into people. I remember bumping into Brian May of Queen. We knew each other, bumped into him in the airport in Chicago. And the word had got out, Caleb's just turned 30, And so Brian said to me, hey, man, I just heard you turn 30. How did it go? Like, you're supposed to die at 30, Rock and roll, you're supposed to die at 30, And so I would tell him and other people what I just told you about hearing the voice, And the response I got was pretty interesting. It was all like, oh, great, who's the dealer? Can you hook a brother?
I need to hear some of them voices, man.
Yeah. What were you smoking? And all this kind of stuff,
That's pretty funny, man.
And it was like, and I would say, no, you don't understand. Like, this was real. This was real, And so, and that was how that happened. And then it wasn't until 1982, after a friend of mine, Chester Thompson, who played drums for Genesis, Phil Collins and stuff, Weather Report, we became friends. And he told me he was a Christian, went to church, didn't mean anything to me, and then things were getting really bad for me. And he invited me to go to church one day, which was Easter Day in 1982. And he took me to the church, and as I'm sat in the church during the worship time, as they're singing, everybody's singing, the same voice I heard in the hotel room speaks to me right there in the church.
Now, were you sitting in the church alone, or it was filled already? It was during the services.
Service is going on. I was in the church. The service is going on. They're doing the worship, singing and everything, And while they're singing this, I hear this voice, same voice that I promised myself I'd find out who it was, speaks to me right there in the church and says to me, Caleb, it's time for you to come home to me today because I have a new life for you. Then the light bulb went on, and I went, aha, this is Jesus.
Okay, so you hear this voice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it took you a few minutes. Like, you didn't just say, oh, that's Jesus. Like, you probably had it was
instant.
Oh, it was. Okay, so you
absolutely, it was like instant. The dots, the people were singing, they were singing this song that I'd never heard before, just a very simple chorus. It's called, In My Life, Lord, be glorified today. It just keeps repeating over and over again. They were singing that, and in the midst of that song, it's time to come home to me today because I have a new life for you. Instantly, it was like I'm in peace. I mean, it was like something happened to me that, the light bulb went on, and I knew there was no question in my mind who that voice belonged to. And it was on that day I went forward at the end of the service and I said yes.
Wow. Okay. That's a big leap of faith.
Oh, yeah.
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 I experienced a peace, best way I can, I told you about, you asked about what drives, and the hatred for my dad and everything. In that moment, when I heard that voice in the church, it was like somebody poured a bucket of peace all over me. And all of a sudden, all this hatred that had been boiling away in my guts for all those years since I was 12 years old was gone.
You just felt, you felt free. You felt like a million-pound weight lifted off you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Man.
Oh yeah. It was experiential. It wasn't just like, well, this is a nice idea. This was a real, profoundly deep experience. No drug, no amount of sex, drugs, and rock and roll could ever get rid of that thing that was in my guts. That I had
of course.
You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
At that time, when I heard that voice in the church, that time on Easter Day, 1982, it was life-changing. That was it.
You know, it's interesting. When I forgave my dad, and I didn't forgive him face to face because he's a toxic guy, but when I forgave him,
there you go.
It was, like I said to you, it was like a million-pound weight. And what blew my mind was, usually in your life, when you have something huge happen, there's a tremendous amount of concentrated, you've completed a project, you worked in the studio for a week. And I guess maybe the way to look at it is, man, it was 55 years of effort concentrated until I finally forgave him. So maybe that, I shouldn't I shouldn't be, there was a ton of effort, but it that simple thing, man.
Oh yeah.
It like changed my whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. It's really weird how that happens, isn't it?
Forgiveness is the most powerful thing.
For you, not who, who cares about the other guy?
Right. For the person that's actually doing the forgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. But I had it all wrong all these years in my head. I thought it was like, if I had to forgive him, then I had to get, that meant I gave him permission. That's nothing to do with that. Yeah, I just forgave the guy. Like, man, you have limitations. You probably have a bunch of stuff you couldn't deal with. I forgive you. And then it was like, poof.
That's
like,
right.
Wow,
That's
man,
right.
I wish I got hip to this 30 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, tell me about it. Oh, boy. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty wild.
And, that whole thing of forgiveness, that's the central thing of the cross that Jesus died for us. That's the central thing.
Yeah.
Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Wow. In 84, then you wrote your dad an actual letter letting him.
Yeah.
What transpired in you once you did that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the same thing. And that I was about to get married. So I got a divorce from my first wife. That all blew up. So now my current wife and we're going to, in fact, this year March, so next month, we'll be celebrating 36 years.
Holy shit, dude. Yeah, right on, man. That's really, that is awesome.
He's a treasure, yeah.
Hey, man, you know what? I just realized what I'm drinking out of. If you could see this. How funny is that? And my wife hates this mug. I'm like, I love this mug. We've been together 27 years. That's 36 years. That's awesome, man.
Years, yeah.
Yeah, congratulations, man. That's really cool.
You.
Yeah.
Thanks. So what prompted it was, so we're getting ready to get married, right? So we're getting married in the church, met my wife at church. So we're going to these pre-marriage counseling classes. And the very last class, we got into like 6 classes or something, the last one, the whole subject was the topic of forgiveness. And so the pastor, he starts talking about this. And I remember he said, it was actually very short. He said, there is certain things in your life certain things that are good things that you're going to bring into your marriage. And then he says, there are other things, bad things that you don't want to bring into your marriage. And he said, there are some people in your life, it could be parents or other influential people that you've had a bad time with and you need to forgive, And I remember he said something about, people will say, well, time heals all things, all this. He says, no, you need to forgive, And as he's talking this down, I could just feel like the finger of God in my chest going, this is your time now to forgive your dad. This is your time. And I knew it. I just knew it. So then he suddenly stops that was like basically the end of the teaching. And he says, now we've got 20 minutes left before we're going to go into the service, you know. He says, what we're going to do, we're just going to get on our knees and pray. And you need to name whoever it is, name them before God, and just start to hand them over to Jesus and forgive them. And he also said, some of you, you're dealing with things that happened a long time ago, and you may have forgotten. And he says, you need to ask the Holy Spirit, and he'll help you remember. You need to just hand them over to Jesus. So I said, okay, I'll do that. I got on my knees, and I did exactly what the guy said. And my goodness me, that's where the 100-pound weight really came off my shoulders. Because I suddenly, as I was praying, I remember I told God, I told the Lord, I said, Jesus, I choose now to forgive my dad for all the things that he's done. And all of a sudden it was like a ton of stuff came into my mind that I'd forgotten about, you know. And I just named it before him, and I suddenly realized that my dad did not know what he was doing. It was like I really gained an understanding of what Jesus was saying on the cross and just came into alignment with that. Father, I'm forgiving my dad now, because now I know he didn't know what he was doing. He was driven by his own damage.
Right.
You know,
totally.
I have to let him go.
Yeah.
I have to let him go. You know, I'm not his judge. And then the other thing that came into my mind was the fact that only God has the full picture of my life. He knows the beginning, he knows the end. My dad's life is something different. God's in charge of that. I have to let him go. I'm not his judge or anything like that, you know. And I don't want to bring that into my marriage, you know.
No.
So after that prayer time, that's when I got up off of my knees. I literally felt like, as you say, 100-pound weight come off my shoulder. You know, then it was after that, then it was like, I remember I woke up one day and I really felt a strong impression to write my dad a letter, which is what I did, you know, and found out his address and sent it to him, you know. But that was a pivotal time. Yeah.
And then 10 years later, I guess the Postal Service is slow in Europe. 10 years later, he calls you up.
Yeah.
And he wants advice.
Yeah.
And you guys reconcile. He comes and hangs out, visits you for a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seemed from the movie that he had genuinely changed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which
absolutely.
is nice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, I sent the letter off to him in 1984.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect a reply, and I never got one. And that's fine, you know. I just did what I knew I was supposed to do, you know.
For you.
For me, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then 10 years later, you know, I get a call. And by this time, I'm a pastor on staff at a church. And the secretary calls me up. She said, there's somebody on the phone for you from Amsterdam. My dad was living out there. And I thought, well, I don't know any church people in Amsterdam. So I said, well, I'll take the call. And it's my dad on the phone, you know. And I was shocked to hear him on the phone, you know, man, because me and my sisters, we used to call him the monster, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Couldn't wait for him to get out.
Yeah, I feel you, man.
You know, so all of a sudden I've got the monster on the phone, you know.
Yeah, that had to be weird, right? That had to be like...
It was weird, totally weird, you know. But my dad, to his credit, you know, even though he was crazy, you know, he had a great sense of humor.
Right.
And so the first thing he says to me, he says, oh, I got your letter. Like as if he got it last week.
Yeah.
You know, this is 10 years later, you know.
I got your letter.
Yeah, I got your letter. Yeah, I know what you're doing, you know. And he said, I'm proud of you. Whoa, you're proud of me? Okay.
That had to feel weird, almost like I would imagine your initial reaction was probably not good. Like,
well, the walls were up. As soon as
right.
The walls went up. I think, okay,
right.
What are we in for now? You know.
Yeah. What's on your agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So, yeah, when he said that, and then he told me his predicament, he said, I'm calling to ask for your advice. I'm thinking, the monster's asking me for my advice. I said, well, yeah, what's up? What's going on? And that's when he told me. He says, I've got cancer. And I've been to the doctors. They want to take some more x-rays. And so I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll have the church pray for you, And I did ask him, I said, do you by any chance have a Bible? He said, yes, I do. I said, wow, this is, now you've really blown my mind. The monster has the Bible. Okay. So, I took him through some scripture and he confessed Christ over the phone. So, okay, so we get to praying, go get your x-rays done, let me know what the story is. So he gets back to me a week later and tells me that they took x-rays and they said, for some reason, the cancer stopped spreading. We think we can get it out with surgery. So he opted for the surgery. That was successful. And so when he recovered from the surgery, he said, then he called me back, and he says, I need to come over there and speak with you, And I said, well, that's fine. We can talk. We got the phone, we're good, He said, no, I need to come and speak with you.
That had to be a little uncomfortable, like the anticipation of that, even though everything was hunky-dory.
Yeah. But he said these words. He said, I need to come and speak to you. He says, I need to clean the slate with you.
That's cool.
Okay. So he came over and spent a month with us, and he had all kinds of questions, about the church and religion and this, that, and the other, And it wonderfully ended up with me being able to baptize him. He would sit in our house. I still remember he's sitting in the couch, and this is me and my wife and our two kids were running around the house, and he's just watching us doing life, And I remember one time I looked over and he sat on the couch. He's got tears coming down his face. I said, you okay, Dad? He said, can I get you something? What's up? He said, no. He says, I'm doing just fine. He says, I'm just looking at what's going on here. And I'm thinking, if I had known half of what you now know, things would have been different.
Wow. That was very cool.
Oh, yeah.
Of him. Because he owned.
Oh, he did.
That's really cool.
We would have these amazing conversations where we would stay up, drinking a beer till like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was just letting him talk.
Yeah.
And he was telling me stuff. I found out more about my dad during those times than I ever knew in my life, telling me about his childhood and, how he was abused by his step-parents and everything. Yeah. And I thought, oh, my goodness me. Yeah.
So he had all these demons, but he didn't.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't able to control them.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Wow. There's one thing which I thought was amazing. Your mom, the grace, when they talked to her about when she realized you were on, you were using.
Yeah.
The grace with which she handled that. Like, how did she know? Because, man, dealing with addicts is not normal shit.
No.
How did she know? She said something like, I knew there's nothing I can do. just be there from. That's not a normal reaction. Like a norm. Right. When I say normal, the typical reaction.
Sure.
Unless you've been to NA or Nar-Anon or something like. The typical reaction is, I'm going to fix this. We could do this. But she was smart. How the hell? I was blown away by the grace she had with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Grace is the right word. And she was, she grew up in the church. She was a God-fearing woman all of her life. And so she just knew, she just went to prayer. She knew she couldn't win through an argument, and she back, well, even before I was born, but she was always picking my dad up off the floor.
So maybe she had the experience through him.
Oh, yeah. And all the jazz musicians. Oh,
okay. Because I was shocked. I was like, in a very good, I was like, oh my God, this is the smartest, most intuitive human being I've ever seen.
Yeah, she was amazing. Of course, now she'd been through it and seen it. She never drank, smoked, never did nothing like that herself. but she was his rock,
Yeah.
upon which he had to lean on because when he was a mess.
Yeah.
So of course, and she saw all the jam sessions with all the great jazz musicians and stuff, all out of their minds. Saw it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story, man. Let's talk about one question I want to ask you is one of my own personal things that was a fallout because of the similar upbringing. I never asked for help, not because I thought I was a badass and I don't need your, that was the word help just was not in my lexicon. Like I didn't know that existed because, you know, it's kind of like you, your dad, you got a guitar. Hey man, enjoy later. I'm out, you know?
Yeah.
I was curious if you had any of that experience. Like if was asking for help difficult for you? Because sometimes it is, sometimes it's not.
That's a good question. Asking for help, like when
anything, asking for help, like help is probably, let me be more specific, guidance, like mentor type of help, guidance, like, hey man, I'm really confused. I have a tough decision, or, man, I'm not sure career wise. Can you point me in the right, you know, stuff like heavy stuff.
It wasn't in my lexicon either. And I think the reason, most probably, when I think about it, you know, growing up, I mean, I was born in 48. So we were baby boomers, front edge baby boomers, you know, and especially in England. When I grew up,
you're 72?
I will be in October, yeah.
Man, you look great.
Thank you.
What the hell are you eating out there in California?
But I think, you know, growing up in England at that time, the country was still rebuilding after the war.
Yeah.
So the ethic, if you like, was just get on and do it.
Yeah.
Roll up your sleeves, fix it, get it fixed.
Right, right.
This whole idea of getting counsel, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
It just wasn't there. The whole psychological approach to things, it just was not there. During my formative years, it wasn't there. It was so, like as I told you, it was like, I told my mum when I was 15, I'm done with school. Okay, go get a job. Okay, I'll get a job.
Yeah.
It was not like, oh, how do I get a job? You just get on the train and you go wherever and you start knocking on doors, you know? And so, so it just was, that's the only answer I can think of, you know?
Well, you also sounded like pretty intuitive, like, because you had these opportunities at Dick James, and it sounds like you had like very good intuition to sort of follow your nose a little bit and say, you know, nobody's telling me this, but I have an instinctual thing here. I need to go this way and pay. Like you had some really good awareness. Yeah, that's great. Very good, man.
You know, I've never in my life had to write out a resume.
Very cool.
Never have, you know, it just doesn't, it's like, oh, you do this? Okay, great. Well, you do this, you do it well. Great, we need you over here. Okay, great.
But you know what? As I get older and as I shift in my own life to doing things that are not pushed, but that are sort of like organically come about, I can understand that. Because I think if you're in the right place and if your intentions are good and if you're doing things for the right reason, sometimes those things fall into, not all the time, but sometimes they fall into place, like, as opposed to trying to like be a little more willful maybe, you know, and push and make things happen. Not that you don't push, you got to work hard, but you know, being open to things instead of you determining, sort of, you know?
It's a funny deal. So and I think, you know, it affects the music world a lot. I think so much music these days, you know, these days bands are not really bands.
No, they're not.
They're
Not many.
products that are put together.
Yeah.
Oh, we need a guitar player. Okay, get him. He's got the look or whatever, you know. But there's no like doing life together.
Yeah, it's not a lot of that for sure. You got an
Yeah.
artist, maybe he or she writes the songs, maybe
Yeah.
somebody else writes the songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody else writes the music. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a lot of bands.
Right. And so back to like, you know, Elton's band or Hookfoot and all that stuff, we were doing life together.
Yeah.
The music was the life.
Yeah.
We lived it, ate, slept, and breathed it, you know. And so that's why there's that chemistry. You know, people, you know, the people talk to this day. You know, I think this year they're celebrating 50 years since Tumbleweed Connection.
Wow.
50 years. But people are still talking about, how did you guys get that sound? It just gels like it does this.
That's a great album, man. That's a great record.
Well, it does that because we were doing this.
Yeah, that's a great record, man. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful music on there, man.
Yeah. And we were young, but we were doing life together. And, you know, we didn't think, I mean, if somebody had told me back then, in 50 years' time, they're going to be celebrating this music, I'd have said, you're absolutely, just like, couldn't even comprehend it, you know.
And here you are.
I think that's the secret to a lot of it is that we were doing life together.
Yeah.
You know, the good and the bad, you know, we were just in the trenches together, just doing life together, you know. And that's what comes out in the music.
And I think that's what makes like a good marriage, a long-term marriage, if you're doing it together, the good and the bad.
Right.
You know, like you were saying about the last class in the marital class was about forgiveness. Yeah. Man, if you're in a long-term relationship, you got to be able to forgive because, you know, I'm not even talking about like infidelity, but there's going to be stuff in 30, 40 years, a long time, man, you're going to piss each other off, period. That's just, you know, if you're not prepared to do that, you're done.
Yeah, right.
What is the most important thing your dad and your mom taught you?
Well, as a musician, you know, my musical gift primarily comes from my dad's side of the family. And one of the things that he taught me that always stuck, and I think is a good one as a musician, he used to say, son, always listen to the best. Always listen to the best players. He says, that way you'll learn something. He says, don't waste your time listening to people that don't know what they're doing. And I have to say this, it's good.
Yeah.
You know.
And how about your mom? What's the best thing? What's the most important thing she taught you?
Oh, my God. My mom, my goodness.
Man, she seemed like the sweetest lady.
Yeah, my mom just passed away.
I'm really sorry, man. Yeah, I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah, we buried her in January this year. She was
God, that's just a month and a half ago.
Yeah, she was 101 years old.
Wow, man. Bless her, man. 101. So sorry for your loss, man.
Yeah, so appreciate that. And boy, how can I sum that up? Loyal, friend, she was committed to God in a great way that was not religious. She was every bit a Christian, but not like, you know, she was, you know, you should have heard what people said about her at her memorial.
Well, I think faith and religion are two different things.
Yeah. And everybody said about her that, you know, she was like their second mother to her.
Wow.
To them, you know. So she just had that about her, you know, she cared for people. She was my best friend.
Yeah.
You know, so during my tough times, I could always talk to my mum.
That's really cool.
she was my friend. So I could always talk to my mum, you know. And that carries a lot of weight, you know. Yeah, everybody loved my mum. And she was very wise, you know. And she loved reading her Bible. Her favorite book in the Bible was the book of Proverbs, which is all about wisdom. And she was wise.
Yeah, she was a smart woman, man. You could tell
without ramming it down your throat. You know, she was, you know, very gracious, as you say, you know, and very, very approachable. And funny too. We laugh a lot. I mean, we have a great time laughing. Very funny. Oh yeah, great humor. Yep. So she was a good package.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry for your loss again. That's a tough one. Hey, I want to switch gears for just a couple of minutes for all the guitar nerds listening. Yeah. I've seen some recent videos of you, and you're not playing with a pick. Have you always played without a pick?
People ask me.
People want to know, Caleb.
Yeah,
Inquiring minds. Yeah, man.
You know, I've been playing without a pick now for about 15 years.
How did you just suddenly switch? That's so cool.
Yeah, it was, well, for reasons of tone and articulation. I've always played acoustic guitar, so I've always been a finger picker with acoustic.
Okay.
I've always had that there, you know. And of course, on all the early recordings, you know, I'm playing with a pick, you know, just like every other electric player. But just over the years, I think, and I can't think of a defining time or something when he switched. But I think it was just my ears suddenly became attuned to a certain tonality that you can only get with playing a pick. We're playing without a pick.
Sure, yeah. Well, so you're much more. It's a much more tactile. I mean, it's a much better bonding with the instrument. I would love to be able to play without a pick. Yeah,
I love it. You know, and it's so funny now. I've actually tried getting back to playing with a pick, and I can't do it.
That's wild.
I mean, I can play, but it's like, this is not happening, you know. When I go back to my fingers, you know, there's so much more articulation of a note.
Right.
And I come to find a pick is one-dimensional in terms of its sound. You got that click, and it's just that hard-edged sound, you know, whereas with you, but what I do, I use primarily my thumb and forefinger. And sometimes these three, there we go. Because you use these three fingers here.
Do you have acrylics on, or your nails aren't even particularly long?
No. I keep them short.
Wow.
But sometimes what I do, I use the back end of my nail. So that gives me just enough light and shade. So I can make it sound like I'm playing with a pick, but I'm not.
It sounds great.
Yeah, it works. It
works wonderful. Yeah. I mean, there's no like issues with tone. It sounds beautiful. I was just like, I was like, wow.
Yeah, and so I've just developed this technique that really, you know, comes out of playing acoustic guitar, and just transferred it over to the electric guitar.
And it sounds. I mean, you're sounding great.
Thanks.
I mean, you're sounding beautiful, man.
Yeah, I'm having a good time.
What's your go-to guitar right now, and has that changed over the years?
My go-to guitar actually is this very lovely Fender Strat that I got for my birthday last year, actually.
The red one. I saw you playing a Fiesta Red. I thought it was a Fiesta Red one.
There was one. No, that was an older one. Let's see. Where is it here? In fact, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Okay, so it's okay. Regular burst Strat.
Yeah, brand new. It's the American Player Series.
What kind of pickups do you have on there?
DiMarzio.
Which ones?
These
if you remember.
Are called hot rails. But these
hot rails. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, these pickups are actually about 15 years old. I had them in my older Strat that I used to have, and I put them in here, and it just works great. And I'm really enjoying. This is the first Strat I've had with a maple neck.
Yeah, your other one had like rosewood, I think.
Rosewood, yeah.
Yeah.
But this baby is just does it. Yeah. Gets all the colors.
What was your number one back in the day?
That was a 64 Strat.
Wow. Do you still have that?
No, I know who's got it. I'm waiting for him to kick the bucket. So
Will it to you?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the singer in Hookfoot, Ian Duck, he has it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. It was like, I wish I'd never given it to him. Yeah.
And I should mention for everybody listening, Hookfoot was a great band, man. If you want to go hear some like good old school 70s rock and roll, check them out. They're a very good band. Really good band. Favorite musicians you've enjoyed playing with?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Well, it's not going to be John Oates.
No. God. Oh boy. Man, that's let me see here. You know, one of my guitar heroes who is now a good friend of mine is Phil Upchurch.
Why do I know that name?
Phil Upchurch was the house guitar player for Chess Records back in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Phil Upchurch.
Who did he play with a jazz guitar player later on?
Yeah, George Benson.
And anybody else after that?
Well, he's worked with all kinds of people.
I'm almost positive I saw him.
He's amazing. He's a legend.
Yeah.
So Phil Upchurch, Abraham Laborio.
Oh yeah,
good friend of mine. Always loved playing with him.
How do you have that much talent in the family, man? Between him and Abe Jr., man, it's like what a rhythm section, man.
Oh
and,
yeah.
I saw a video of Abe Sr. playing recently, and he's like playing like a 7-string bass or something, and I was like, I was just like gobsmacked. I couldn't believe what he was doing on that thing, man. He was just like as spry as a 19-year-old kid on the bass, man.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, great player. Yeah.
Anyone else comes to mind that you like that was you really enjoyed playing with?
Well, I always enjoy playing with my current bass player, Pee Wee Hill, and my drummer, Doug Matthews. Excellent player. Charles Williams is my keyboard player. These guys are really great.
Tell me where do you gig out, and like where do you post your gigs? Because I bet there are people listening that would love to come.
You know, I haven't been playing much. We haven't been playing much lately because of working on the movie and stuff and taking care of my mum. But we're looking to resurface here this year.
Okay. Are you going to post that anywhere?
Oh yeah. I'm on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and stuff.
Okay. Great. You played it? Didn't you play at Alva's recently? Or was that a while back?
Yeah. It's a while back now. Yeah, but we've been.
Yeah, I saw that. A buddy of mine plays there a lot, so I'm familiar.
Oh,
with that
okay. Yeah, that is a great room to play.
Yeah, that's what he said.
It's acoustically one of the greatest rooms.
Yeah.
It's a jewel hidden away, down there by Long Beach.
Is that's the one that used to be a dance studio or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, look, tell me your top 3 Desert Island discs, just for now, because that could change.
Oh my goodness me! Top 3 Desert Island discs. Sly Stone. Fresh. That album. There's an old Phil Upchurch album called Black Gold.
Wait a minute. Was that what's the guy's name who played keyboard? Was that
Donny Hathaway?
Donnie played on that?
Donny Hathaway played on that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who's man? There's another guy. I can't think of his name now. Who had an album like Black Gold? It was something like that. Man, I'm sorry. I'm just having a brain fart. Black Gold, Phil Upchurch, and what else?
Yeah. Little Feat, Dixie Chicken.
Wow, that was out of left field. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That was a great record.
Yeah. Yeah, I just was listening to some Little Feat the other day, and I thought, man, that band was just something else.
Yeah.
Oh, George, he was amazing.
Yeah. Well, they were all, like you said, man, they were like this.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They were
yeah.
just like,
you don't get that chemistry these days in bands.
Because you need a bunch of albums. You need to, like, you need to get someone behind you to say, hey, man, we're going to tour and do the record and tour for 18 months. There's not a lot of record labels doing that anymore. It's unfortunate. It's expensive to do on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'm going to ask you one last question. And man, Caleb, thank you so much. It was really, I'm so happy that I got to talk to you, man. You know what else is cool? I remember I used to look at the back of the records. You were one of the first black guys in a rock band even. And it was like, wow, this is really cool. This black guy's playing rock. I mean, it was like, it's kind of sad. That's like not that long ago, but it was really cool, man. And I always used to dig your music, man. I'm so happy everything worked out for you, man. You had a great story, and it ended nice with your dad, man. That's nice, and it ended nice for you, man. So everything worked out. Great story, man. I'm so happy that happy ending for everybody involved.
It's great.
Tell me what the biggest change has been in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional, and how much is a natural part of aging?
Over the last 10 years. Boy, changing my personality. Oh, gosh. Well, that's a tough one. I'd like to think I'm a bit more patient with things. I'd like to think that I've been a good dad to my kids, and a good husband to my wife. We have a great relationship, me and my wife. And so those are the things that really, taking care of family, and just continuing to be, I am very, very thankful to God that He's preserved my fingers and my creative juices. I can still play and make music.
Man, you sure can.
And so I still got some music left to make. So once the movie's out, I'm looking forward to doing some little bit of touring and playing and recording some more music.
And if you do, please come back on the show, man. I'd love to. If you got a new record or something coming out, come back on. I'd love to promote it and support it. Please do.
Absolutely.
My pleasure, man. Let me tell everybody about the movie. It's called A Voice Louder Than Rock. It's Caleb's biographical. It's a wonderful movie, man. It's a really cool, very real, very honest, well made, well produced. It's a first class movie. It's won several awards. They have distribution. So just to put this out there, they're looking for a few more investors to sort of give the movie the final push it needs to get out there. If you are interested in that, a couple of things. A, make sure you've got money. I mean, they're not looking for a $50 Kickstarter contribution. They're looking for investors to put money in the movie and then get a return on their investment. And if you are interested in that and seriously committed to doing something like this, contact the producer, Valerie Tucker. And if you go to her website, do you know her website? Is it just ValerieTucker.com or? Here, let me look it up real quick because she has a company name. I think it's the name of her company.
Glow Rock. Yeah.
Glow Rock?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Glow Rock is the name of her company. So just look up Valerie Tucker and Glow Rock and you'll be able to get it. And she has a contact information on there. And again, be legit. Call, email her, tell her you heard the show or you saw the show and you're interested and you'd like to talk further with her and so on and so forth. Let's see. Also, if you want to connect with Caleb at his church, he is a worship pastor at the Church on the Way in Van Nuys, California. Again, please be respectful of his time. Like, don't go hang and say, hey, man, can we hang out and play some guitar? I mean, that's not the context that he's at the church at. Just be respectful of the time. Just give him the same respect you'd want in your time. I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with you after services, but like it's not time to go hang out and jam with him. And that's it, man. Anything else I missed?
I think you got it good there, my man.
Thank you so much for everything, man. Hang on, let me wrap this up, and I wish you the best of luck with the movie. It's a wonderful movie. You got a wonderful story, and I'm glad you guys put it together, man, and I hope for continued success with it.
You bet.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Again, everybody check out Caleb Quaye's movie. It's called A Voice Louder Than Rock, and it is a great story. Again, if you're interested in sponsoring or in somehow investing in the movie, contact Valerie Tucker. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so please choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. And I am out. Caleb, thank you for everything, brother.
Bless you, Craig. Thanks a lot.
Likewise, sir.